debates and decisions that are shaping our continent now in Europeans.
They may be small in numbers, but these Estonian soldiers know these war games will soon be replaced by the real thing.
But they can also throw grenades out, so you've got to be
At the beginning of December, 34 of them will be out of these trenches and heading for Iraq. Estonia is a member of the US-led Coalition of the Willing and has been sending troops to Iraq since 2003. It also belongs to NATO. And while some coalition partners have withdrawn their troops from Iraq, Estonia has given no such deadline of withdrawal. Christopher Allen Shepherd has been training these forces for 12 years.
I found that the guys are young, fit and energetic, with a great motivation, and obviously going to a real war zone and also operating with the Americans in one of the hottest places in the world, it does fix them to focus, and their attitude allows them to finish up themselves with a good product and a good soldier.
Training not to be taken lightly. 2 Estonians have already died in Iraq. Sergeant Peter Heinzauer was friends with one of them. He's heading for his 3rd tour of duty in Iraq. He and fellow soldiers understand the dangers.
It's part of the risk, and there's nothing we can do about that. It's our job. There has to be some element of fear. It's our survival instinct.
It's a world of risk, and we have to. We soldiers, we are here to stay for our nation, and we have to do it the best way we can. Also, our nation has to be a good neighbor and good ally. It takes something away from us, of course, but it's a very heavy price, but we are ready to pay it.
These are the rooftops of Tallinn, the capital of Estonia. Today it is a vibrant city where 1/3 of the country's 1.4 million people live. For this small Baltic nation and its neighbors, joining NATO and the European Union were seen as vital steps in guaranteeing their political and economic security. And US President George Bush picked Estonia to visit on his way to the NATO summit in Latvia at the end of November. Some say it's a sign of support to those countries keeping soldiers in Iraq. Ando Leps is a former member of parliament and professor of law. He worries the Baltic countries are being hijacked by a US foreign policy gone wrong.
Talking about the price, Estonians have a question now. Why should we participate in such a deal, such as Iraq? Why do all this? Is this the price we have to pay? Why do we have to pay it?
While a majority of Estonians are against sending soldiers to Iraq, an even greater majority support NATO membership. For them, it's a guarantee of security on their borders after almost half a century of Soviet occupation. Igor Grazin is a member of the ruling Reform Party and of Estonia's parliament. He says, if anything, NATO paid the bigger price when it took in the Baltic states in March of 2004.
NATO is truly important because it determines Estonia's strategic position in the modern world that has become much more complicated, and than having been in the sphere of influence of several big powers, particularly in the sphere of interest and strategic influence of Russia. I think that establishing NATO border on the eastern border of Estonia is crucial for our being, survival, for our style of life, for our cultural future, for everything.
This is Paldiski, some 50 kilometers west of Tallinn. During the Soviet times, it was a military base. Today, this is what is left of the so-called Pentagon, which was the largest nuclear submarine training center in the Soviet Union. Paldiski's location along the Baltic Sea was a strategic strong point for the Soviet Navy. It was also strictly off-limits. Ukrainian-born Valentin Konstantinov came to work in Paldiski in 1949. Like many of the estimated 16,000 military personnel living here, his world changed dramatically when the last Soviet troops pulled out in 1994. He decided to stay, mainly because he had little choice.
When the Soviet troops were leaving, personally, I had the feeling if I can put it like this, of drama, because I had devoted all my young years to the military service. Then I retired, and when the troops were leaving, I didn't know what would happen to us.
И когда войска уходили, и мы не знали, что будет с нами.
Konstantinov is one of the 4,000 people now living in Paldiski. Most of them are Russian-speaking. Although there are still some reminders of the town's once Soviet presence, Paldiski is also trying to attract younger Estonians who are ready to invest in its future. Jan Mulder is the chairman of Paldiski City Council, but he was also the first mayor of Paldiski when the Soviet military left 12 years ago. Here he points to a painting he rescued from the submarine training center. Estonians wanted to destroy it. He says at the beginning his main goal was to make ethnic Russians feel at home in Estonia.
Of course, mostly went back to Russia people who in working age and stayed here, mostly old people, and especially for them, I think it was not their mistake to be here. But of course, they had to accept Estonian rules, Estonian culture, Estonian language, and it was okay.
Choosing to be Estonian. This has been the choice offered to most of the country's ethnic Russians. They make up a third of the population. But even if the Estonian language is still a barrier for Paldiski's museum director, he's happy he decided to stay. A former nuclear submarine captain, he adds that NATO membership is just not an issue for Russia anymore.
This very fact, that Estonia is a NATO member, does not pose a problem for me. Because I believe any independent and sovereign country has the right to choose which organization it wants to join.
While these soldiers will soon be in Baghdad, more than 100 others will join NATO forces in Afghanistan. It's a choice they say they're glad they made, but it's far from their last.
But no, we have done very big job, and we are proud for the job we have done, but I think that that's not it. We have to do more and more and more, and membership of EU and NATO is just one step forward. It's not an end station.
When Estonians gained their independence 15 years ago, one of their first decisions was to create a national defense force, a choice they'd waited over half a century to have the right to make.